Hey guys, welcome to the channel. My name is Jay Wilson, and today I'm going to show you how I tackled this problem of scraping a website. Now, web scraping is certainly nothing that I've invented, and full disclosure, like different companies feel a certain kind of way about it because arguably it kind of hammers their website a little bit. Um, so like, think twice, be nice. But this project was born out of a very real need, which is at my organization, at any given time, there's someplace between 20 and 30 support tickets that are open with Domo. And one of the challenges that I've had with them since the dawn of time is that probably 50% of the emails that they send are spam or actually don't have any new information in them. And a lot of times when they send an email to you, the context of like what was the history of that ticket and the comments that came before it aren't part of the email. The only way to see that stuff is to actually go into the support site, which is great for me because I'm an admin. But if I open a ticket on the behalf of one of my users, they might want to know the status of a ticket and what's kind of been happening there, but they don't have the access to the Domo support site in order to see it, which is its own bag of worms problems. So I thought to myself, what if I could create a data set that has this support ticket, as well as the comments and comment history, and I could take that information and put it into the project management tool that I use, namely Jira, which all of my internal users have access to. That's the mission, that's the vision, and that's what I'm trying to get to. I also want to do an integration with Asana, which I've already written and maybe have done a video about. But that's my goal, is like to get all of this information into one place where my users are when they're trying to do work. And unfortunately, Domo wasn't able to provide a data set that has the comments and comment history. So I kind of have to make my own. And let me just get to the solution so you can see it, and then I'll go into some detail for those of you who want to understand a little bit more about web scraping. So at the end of the day, I'm using a library that is available on PyPy called Domo Library Extensions, and I'll take this code and put it on in my GitHub repo, as well as have a link of it in the description below so you guys can see it. But in terms of the number of lines of code that you need to handle web scraping, that's pretty much it right here. So I don't know, what, 30 lines? Um, because the support site is behind a username and password login screen, you have to have a method for handling authentication. Like your browser has to know what your username, what your password is, what to type in, and where to click in order to authenticate the driver. Now the driver is just the browser, the headless browser, or the browser with a head, depending on how you do it, that like goes to a website, waits for it to render, and then downloads the content, right? That's functionally what web scraping is. And so I have a function here that will handle authentication against Domo, assuming that I provide my username and password, and we'll actually see this work in a minute. And then we'll say, okay, this is the website that I want to scrape, which on its own, relatively easy. But the trickier thing is it says, oh, well, if you find any other URLs on this page, like links to other support tickets, open each of those support tickets and download the content there. But the part that's a little bit complicated is that different pages have different stuff you're interested in, right? The page that has a list of all of my tickets, I just want that table of all of my tickets, which is a completely different set of information than the part of the website that has the comments or the part of the website that has my metadata. I'm like doing this and this because I've been staring at the pages so long, but you might not know what that looks like, right? So again, this content here is stored differently on the page than this content over here, which is also stored differently than this content over here. So how do I know that the page is finished loading? How do I know the interesting stuff to download? That's the magic of this scrape factory class that I have set up, which I'll go through a little bit later. But I think you guys just want to see this bad boy run. So the first thing we do is we set up an instance of what's called the scrape crawler, which is basically my brain that says, oh, here's the URL I want you to scrape. If you find new URLs, add it to a list of URLs to visit. Use this driver generator to get your browser. Use this authenticator function to make sure that that browser is authenticated. Go for it. Do amazing things. So let me go ahead and run this, run that, and it's going to wait until I say crawl URLs. Now, usually people set headless equal to false. It'll run a little bit, sorry, make it headless, as in don't show anything on the screen. It makes it a little bit faster, but for the purposes of you and me kind of looking at this, it's nice to just see what's happening under the covers. So the first thing it did is it navigated to the authentication page. It really quickly typed in my username and password. That typing in of the username and password is this authenticate Domo driver piece. It even knows what button to click in order to authenticate. It then loads up the main page. And then on that page are these tickets. It waits till all the tickets are loaded, scrolls down to the bottom to make sure I truly have all of the tickets. And then it saves that content into all tickets, today's date. Boom, there's there's the whole thing. I wonder if I search for premium. I happen to know that one of my tickets is called create new freemium account. So it's pulling information, or it's pulling down the HTML of that page. Now that's kind of boring. That's not what I really want. What I really want is like a nice little CSV that says, oh yeah, here's clearly the content of that table. This is the stuff that I want. But just in case you decide you want something else, I gave you the whole HTML as well to work with. Now you can see in the background, we're also navigating to the individual URLs, the individual tickets on the page, and it's saying, oh, wait till the content is loaded, and then download some stuff. So again, it's navigating to the page, create new freemium account, index.html is going to have the entire HTML for that page, but what do I actually care about? I care about the case comments on the right and the ticket metadata on the left. I was debating for a while. I was like, man, should I just download the stuff that I'm interested in, or should I get the whole index, the whole page? And I decided to myself, I was like, well, Jay, why don't you download the whole page? That way, if you change your mind about how you want this stuff structured, you have that option because you have the whole HTML and you don't have to re-scrape the page. Especially if you're working in a world where maybe you're paying ChatGPT to scrape pages for you. You want to minimize how much time you spend, or people, how much money you spend scraping pages. And so just scraping the whole HTML, I think, is a little bit of a more flexible option, even if it takes a little bit longer. Cool. So I don't know, I was talking for a while. It took us a couple of minutes to kind of do this, but the reason why it took so long is because every time it scrapes one page, it then requests a new browser that has to go through the authentication process all over again. That's pretty wasteful. And if I was smart, I might like store cookies and then load cookies or something along those lines. But I'm learning as I'm learning as I'm teaching. I'm learning as I'm creating YouTube videos. But what happened here? We had our starting point that said go to the main page. It successfully scraped the main page. And then as it did so, it found two new URLs to kind of scrape. And so it added it to the backlog of tasks to kind of go through. And then as it did so, it didn't find any new URLs to scrape. And by the time it was done, it said, okay, we're finished. And then we were done. So that's exciting. In terms of actually creating a data set, right, I have the files, or I have the data for one ticket over here and the data for another ticket over there. How do I merge this all into one data set? And I think this is kind of the magic of, well, Python and your own creativity, but I just did something kind of fast and easy. I walk over all of the files in the case folder. And then I read in the files as JSON objects, and I get the comments, and I get the metadata as their own object, and then I merge them into one big object. And just to see what that looks like real fast, that's going to look something like this. So I have two tickets. Here's the first one. Here's the second one. I basically have all of the information. And what's kind of interesting is I have a nested object comments, which is a list of comments. I think probably what I'll do someday is take this just as it is right here and just toss it into AppDB, right? Because because AppDB is built on MongoDB, which basically allows me to have a document of unstructured data, or like it doesn't have to be rows and columns, it can be objects that have lists and so on. And that might be an easier way to just kind of store the information so it's off of my computer. And then I can use like pandas or whatever to shape the data the way I want to. So basically I take a data frame of the response object, and then I just rename the description to description. Rename the description into the description, and this could arguably be a data set that I then load into Domo and then show to people with PDP enabled. What I don't like is that comments is like, if there were 50 comments on this one ticket, that would be a pretty wide field and impossible to read. So I might think about changing the granularity of, instead of having one row per ticket, to having one row per comment. And to do that, I basically take my data frame and here I say, for each object in the response, for each comment in comments, smash that all in together into one row function. And then I just do some cleanup, like call description, change the field previously called date to comment date, and then again, I could just store this as a data set in Domo and show it to the right people. Again, guys, I'm not advocating that you should scrape websites, but if it does solve a problem, it solves a problem. Cool. So that's web scraping. And like I said, relatively not a lot of code for getting all of this stuff onto your computer. And what I like about this is I could just set this up to run every day. I could actually schedule this to run in Domo. No, I can't. I cannot schedule this to run in Domo Jupyter, so don't try, because you do have to have Selenium installed. I wanted to take a little bit to talk to you guys about what I learned about web scraping in case you haven't done this before. If you look on a lot of tutorials on the internet, they'll talk to you about how to use like Beautiful Soup to scrape websites. And that works for what we call static websites. These are websites that are not rendered on the back end. What do I mean by rendered on the back end? If I go to, did you see how this section here takes a little bit longer before we see stuff? There, like it took half a second, if that. Or another thing you might be more familiar with is if you go to facebook.com, it obviously doesn't load the whole history of your wall since the dawn of time. It kind of loads stuff as you scroll. Same for Instagram and all those other things. That infinite scrolling means that this part of my page is being rendered on a website, or sorry, rendered on a server, and then being injected into this document, the HTML here. And Beautiful Soup cannot handle that. And so instead, you'll use a tool like Selenium, which creates a browser, like we kind of just saw it automatically going through, and it will pull up the page, wait for the server to render the page, and then download the HTML of that content. Now that's great, but like, how do you know what we're looking for? If you inspect your page here, what you might do is pitch a fit because the page isn't behaving. You might say, hey, oh my gosh, my browser's so slow. Sorry, guys. Inspect this block right here. What is this called? Oh, okay, so this is a span with a class text UI output. Okay, well, what about div? I usually look for div tags because I think in a lot of modern website development, you'll see stuff referred to as having like a div tag, and then it has this class comment body. When the comment body has been rendered, that's how you know you've got comments. So in terms of the code that I wrote, let me pull up the magic. So I have a class called, in terms of classes, the way this scraper class is kind of set up, and it's somewhat documented, and kind of you can see it from the implementation. The config, the scrape config says, hey, this URL is a certain type of page. and we treat that certain type of page a certain way. I wait for a search criteria. Wait until you see that comment body. Wait until you see a comment body, and that's how you know the comments have loaded. Similarly, remember we said this left side renders a little bit differently? Let me inspect this. I know the left side has loaded when I see maybe SLDS form element static. When that appears, that's how I know the page has finished loading. I don't know if that's actually the tag I use, but basically what I use the config to say is for this URL, and the URL will match a certain pattern, wait until you see this search criteria, and then I have a certain content extractor function that I want to run. And basically, how do I take HTML and convert it into that table or that JSON object that I ultimately save to disk? The link extractor function says, hey, you're going to come upon a whole bunch of hrefs. How do I know the ones that are actually interesting? Well, I only care about the ones that are part of the Domo support subdomain. I don't care about links going out to Google or links going out to LinkedIn, or sometimes in the page down at the bottom they say find us on Instagram. I don't care about Instagram. So that's not a link of interest, and Lord have mercy, I would never want to scrape all of Instagram on accident. So the link extractor function says, what are the links that you are actually interested in? Generate file name, right? How do I know what to call the files? How do I name these files that I'm outputting? And then the page source function says, how do I extract the entire index, right? Like how do I index.html? How do I get everything? So let's look at an example of a scrape config. So for Domo support, we have a certain kind of scrape config. For like scraping Domo's KV sites, we have a different config. For scraping the vanilla forums, we have something else. Okay, but specifically for looking at ticket comments, I only will find comments on a page that is /s/case, right? Those are Salesforce cases. Cool. If I see case, I know that I'm looking for ticket comments. Great. What links are of interest? Well, we have a link extractor function. What is the search criteria? Wait until you see comment body. That's how we know the page is loaded. And then how do I extract the content? Well, we have a function for that as well. Let's take a look at this extract content function. So the extract content function says, hand me some soup. And soup, again, is like a processed version of the entire HTML of the page. I don't care about all of the HTML. I literally only care about list content. That list contents class, I'm pretty sure is going to be the start of a table. Let's see if I can find it in here. So this list contents class has the comments container, which is an unordered list. Within that unordered list, I see the list items, and those list items, oh, that was too close. Oh, man. Yeah. These list items are going to be the actual comment body. Thank you for contacting Domo. I'll get your case over to our technical advisor. Spam, spam, spam. But okay, so that's the list item. And basically that's how we convert what is a table into this object, is through this function here. It says, hey, find the list content. Within the list content, find an unordered list, extract all of the list items, find the one with the class of date, find the class of comment body, and turn that into this object. Now, for your needs, you might say, well, Jay, I actually don't care about the date, so I would like to have my own custom version of this extract content function. Fine, yeah, you can. You can modify it and do whatever you want. That's kind of the design of this library, is to make it so that you can define your own scrape configs. You don't have to use mine. But yeah, that's how we handle comments. A similar idea but just slightly different. Let's take a quick look at how we extract the whole page, or sorry, the list of all of the tickets. So remember, there is a function for extracting, the 2 tickets on that main page. Well, how did we do that? Well, let's start at the support all tickets. I have to match on this URL. And I'm not great at regex, but this is actually something ChatGPT is really good at. But this basically says, if my URL ends with support.domo.com/s, that's where it ends. That's how I know I'm on the main page. And so that's how I know I'm going to use this config to scrape the content. And then when it comes time to extract the content, we're going to take a look at Domo support all tickets extract content. That's up here. And this function again says pass me the soup, and we're looking for a table. Big surprise, right? And once you find that table, I just straight turn it into a data frame. Yeah, I just turn it into a data frame. I do a little bit of column renaming, shape it up the way I want, and spit it out. Again, if you decide you want to do it a different way, you just have to modify the extractor function. And again, this library was designed to be recycled, so I can scrape all of the content. I could scrape Amazon if I wanted to, or Domo's knowledge base if I wanted to. Yeah. And then I think the last thing to kind of understand is that the configuration is just like how I approach extracting a page. And then the scrape task is the actual task that says, hey, I want you to scrape this URL using this config and download it to that folder. So the scrape task is like the individual task that says, hey, this is the definition of the task. When we're ready to execute, do the thing, and it scrapes the content. And I think that's kind of the magic of it all is this, the last thing I'm going to show you, the last class of interest for us is the scrape, sorry, it's down at the bottom, the scrape crawler, which is kind of where this all started. The scrape crawler is kind of like the brains of the operation. It says, the thread pool manager basically says this will allow us to scrape 2 or 3 things at the same time. And it's a little harder to see because the authentication task takes so long, but the thread pool manager says, oh, you can have 5 jobs running at the same time, or 7 jobs running at the same time, just to kind of keep me from throttling Domo's support site, but still allowing me to work faster than downloading 1 ticket at a time. The crawler consists of, like, what's the base URL, right? How do I identify the stuff that's interesting to me? Where do I want to download my content to? And it keeps track of the URLs that I've already visited and the URLs I need to visit, right? Because any one page that I go to might say, oh, here's 7 more pages for us to crawl, or here's 3 or 4 new pages to crawl. But it will also test against the list of URLs I've already visited, so I'm not crawling the same page twice or accidentally ending up in an infinite loop. So that's what I use my crawler for, is to manage where I need to go and places I've already visited. The scrape factory basically says, hey, here's a list of configs that I'm expecting. I'm expecting a config for all tickets. I'm expecting a config for just show me a case. And within a case, I might need to scrape it twice, one for the left side of the page and one for the right side of the page. So that's what the scrape factory manages. It says, here's a URL, here's the tasks that you need to do for that URL. And then the driver generator we talked about at the beginning, it says generate a driver that's already authenticated for us. Most of the stuff I don't care about. The only stuff that's of interest is when I spin up or when I run the task to crawl URLs, what it does is it says, hey, give me a URL out of my list of URLs to visit, give me a driver, set up a task, put that task in my executor pile, right? Because I might have 7 or 8 of these tasks that I need to burn through. I'm just going to burn them out as quickly as I can while maintaining a maximum of 5 or however many threads I allocate. That's kind of it in a nutshell. Like if this was TLDR and you like fast forwarded to the end, joke's on you. The end was in the beginning. All you need is this bit of code here, which I'm going to link in my GitHub repo, and this will allow you to scrape Domo's KBs. Stay tuned, I'm going to write this again. Sorry, I said KBs, I meant support site. This will allow you to scrape Domo's support site. Stay tuned, I'm going to also scrape some KBs and maybe vanilla, maybe Domo's community page, because we're supposed to track product feedback on community. So I might have to build a scraper for that or something. But stay tuned. These are the projects I kind of get into in my copious free time on the weekend. I'll catch you guys later.